Woohoo!
Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the nth meetup of the Python Pittsburgh meetup group. I'm sure this will be our best event ever.
Woohoo!
My name's Pip File. I'm a hacker and proud. If you're joining us on the internet, we'll be taking questions on Reddit towards the end of the discussion. Tonight's meetup is a Python packaging and distribution panel. And I'll introduce our esteemed panelists. To my right here is Josh Smith, who's an independent software consultant with over 9,000 years of experience and the author of a book on iOS. To his right is Chris Winters, who's a polyglot programmer. I count at least 6-7 languages, and lead engineer at Turnitin, which solves the NP-complete problem of stopping students from cheating on their homework in constant time.
Whoa.
To his right, Mark Meredith is an engineer at the National Energy Technology Laboratory, where he helps physicists ship fluid dynamics modeling software, which if you ever tried it, you'll know is quite an accomplishment. And maybe we'll see some demos of that later.
I'm so scared.
You should be.
I'm glad I went first.
I've known Chad Whitacre on the end there from PyCon for the last 8 or 9 years, where we hold down the radical politics fort together. In that role, he was the founder of GitHub and is now the lead engineer at Idelic, a trucking safety company. And you should know, though you can't see it here, he wears sandals year-round, even in the snow. And so without further ado, we'll be covering how to write setup.pys, pipenv, Conda, and Dockerizing Python applications. So Josh, we're going to start with you.
Yep, can I get my link? I have a link. So basically, the short summary is don't write setup.pys. Copy and paste the one setup.py that was written once long ago and fill in the blanks. Why is that? So how many of you have packaged your own Python packages? A couple of people. Okay. It's super easy. All you need is a setup.py and setup tools. The setup.py file that will magically appear here in a moment, it's in the Slack.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yes, the first one. That's it. Okay, scroll down a little bit. All right, this is it. Can you zoom in? All right.
Yay.
This is it. All right, so what this does, this magical file, this is how you make pip installable packages. Okay, the first part, it starts out, you import setup tools. Now, setup tools are no longer really supported, and it's old and creaky and sort of crazy, and all the cool kids are doing pipenv now, but you don't have to. You can still write setup.py. The next 2 lines of code, at least, it actually is going to slurp in the readme.markdown, and that's going to provide the actual page on PyPI that your package will have. Then the setup tools.setup starts. And the name of your package, its version, the author email, a little description, a long description. In this case, you could make that pretty much anything. In this case, I use the readme.file because that works too. The long description content type so that it knows how to convert it into HTML. We're using Markdown. A URL, which is the actual path to where the package source or whatever is. And then packages, setuptools.find package is the magic bit there. So what that does is it starts in the directory you're in, recurses down and finds all Python modules and slurps them in. It also looks for Python files too. There are other directives if you want to bundle your own compiled code. And the last lines are Trove Classifiers. Can you open up the other lines? Trove Classifiers come from the following list. Oh,
I closed files.
okay. No, that makes perfect sense. So he's going to show that in a minute. Trove classifiers allow your package to be classified in the whole hierarchical classification that's on PyPI. You know, is it a GPL thing? Is it Python 3 only because you like people? Or is it Python 2 or whatever? Is it source packages? Is it Windows? All that kind of stuff. This is the list of available Trove categories, and you can just scroll for a bit on there.
Yeah.
There's some,
Pretty
most of
amazing
it,
stuff. Wagtail.
Zope,
Heck yeah.
Um,
Represent.
all these things are in there. You pick from that list what you want your categories to be, and then use them.
Look at all these licenses.
Yeah, there are a lot of licenses.
What's the most trolly Trove classifier?
I think it's
The
probably
most lolsy.
for like probably Windows XP. I would say is the
Windows
most trolly.
NT2000.
Second,
Windows Vista.
no, XP.
Why is
totally more
ME
trolly.
not on there? Where's Windows ME?
Windows 3 went earlier.
I would
Yeah,
also-
3.1 or earlier.
I would also accept either SCO or AIX as a
Yeah.
very trolly classification.
Yeah.
Programming language Ada?
Yeah, Ada,
Solaris.
Euler,
Wow.
Modula, whatever. So there's a huge number of classifications. For the most part, what you're going to put in there is what license your application uses, if you're Python 3 or whatever, and if you're Windows compatible.
It's a somewhat rhapsodic taxonomy.
Yeah, it's kind of not super, I don't know what they based it on, but okay, so go back to the setup.py. Please. Okay. The setup.py lives in the base of your project. And how you use it is you run python setup.py build, and that will actually build the product. You can use setup.py to install software if you want to too. You don't have to package it. You can do install, and it will install it into whatever environment that you're using. You can build your binary distributions. It'll actually compile. It'll compile Python stuff. It'll compile some things. If you've got anything more complicated than like a C file, you're going to want to include some of the more advanced options that are way beyond this. Because here's the thing about setup.py, and why I said at the beginning, don't write your own. Just copy one, because setup.py is sort of like a cliff. Like, everything's great, everything's great. Oh, I need to use CMake. Oh, now you're on your own. Like, good luck. And that's about it. You then use a tool called Twine to push your packages up to PyPI, and then everybody in the world can download and install your packages. Once you use a setup.py though, you can set up your own private PyPI registry. You can install them directly out of Git in the requirements.txt. You can even do that off enterprise Git, although authentication sometimes gets a little squirrely on that.
Okay.
That is setup.py.
Cool, thank you.
Questions?
Yeah,
Two questions, and that's
We're gonna
it.
take two questions. We're gonna take two questions after each speaker.
0 questions. Next.
Okay.
I have one.
Oh,
Okay,
sure.
you have one.
What is the hairiest thing you've ever seen in setup.py?
I don't know. So recently I had a situation where there were a bunch of templates, and the person that I was working through the set of problems, it's not super hairy, right? But they had a bunch of templates, and they wanted them to go into a specific place, not where setup.py wanted to put them. And there was a lot of arguing with the tool. That's the most hairiest thing that usually happens, is people who want to, if you ever find yourself like fighting with setup.py, you're wrong, stop. Mostly because setup.py is just a program, right? Like, don't argue with programs. But regardless, setup.py has a certain perspective on the world. And if you go outside of its perspective on the world, you are entering into a land of suffering and pain, and you probably shouldn't do that. Find a different tool, find a tool that doesn't, that is more maintained for that matter. Setup tools aren't maintained anymore. Almost all the documentation you read about how to push to PyPI is currently wrong.
Yeah, so the best documentation on pretty much about half the stuff we're going to talk about tonight, including this, is the Python Packaging Authority. Has a bunch of really good how-tos on how to install packages, how to write one of these things, how to do complicated things like, what if you want to include some files in your tarball that aren't .pys?
Yeah.
Pretty straightforward. It's not. This has been around since the 90s,
It's a long time.
and so it shows its age, and we're just kind of stuck with it. So, okay.
Yeah, and like the whole Twine thing, like if you Google for how to upload a package to PyPI, you'll get a whole bunch of things that'll tell you to do setup.py upload.
Right.
That doesn't work. Use Twine. And then even in the Twine manual, it'll tell you to register. That doesn't work either. You don't have to do that anymore.
Whoa.
So a lot of it's just, yeah, you can
Is it
just
all new with the change to the new cheese shop?
don't know.
Okay.
Tell me about Cheese Shop.
Is that the handoff?
Sure. It's a good transition.
Yeah.
Chad can tell us about the long and illustrious history of
Okay,
PyPI
we
and
can,
the Chief.
we
But yeah,
can
that's-
hit that.
Is there another question? Because
Yeah.
I still got one left. Okay,
Okay.
cheese shop, go.
Well, the cheese shop is of course where you go to get Python packages. Before it was eggs, it was, well now wheels, right? Because it's all Monty Python, so the cheese shop sketch from Monty Python, right? So they just rolled out a new one. Not a new Monty Python, but a new, now they call it warehouse or something. I don't know, it's hard to keep them all straight. But the old crusty server that served PyPI,
Yep.
where you download your packages from, that was the cheese shop.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
And so now we've got the new PyPI that launched earlier this year, right?
Which explains why their website looks so much nicer now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If
yeah, so
you haven't gone to the website in a while, go to it and notice that it looks all like modern and
there's
pretty.
a
not
Mozilla
like-
open source grant that funded that work.
Oh.
And the Python Packaging Authority, Ernest, and Sumina was running it, and there was a lot of good people working on it. So that just launched at the beginning of this year.
Yeah, like they've got a
Yeah,
cool logo now.
That's what Mozilla money will do for you.
Search works. Search didn't
Mostly-
work for like a decade.
Mostly.
Okay, so then Twine is the tooling you want to use to get packages into this package repository.
Yeah.
Wait a sec.
What?
Postgres 2.2. That I'm
High
tickled.
value abstraction over cyclopedia.
I'm tickled because I wrote that.
Aww, I didn't
Really?
know.
Click on
How
that.
great
Really?
is that? How
Yeah.
great is that?
Wow. And you wrote a setup.py and you uploaded it.
I did, yeah. So it used to be, yeah, you had to run.
And so how would we go about
All
installing
right, so
your
this
Postgres tool?
is it my turn now?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I use a laptop?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
So there's a
Shell
terminal
for me.
and
Awesome.
there's a directory to chat and you
Okay,
can
so
do
not
whatever
only
you
am I
want.
live coding, but I'm live coding on somebody else's laptop that I've never touched yet. So this is going to be, I like to think of live coding as kind of pair programming in the extreme, so we're all doing this together. All right, so if I make mistakes, you're going to help me out with this. Also, you're not going to have any of my bash aliases.
Nope.
So let's start with alias L equals ls dash fgl. Okay, clear and okay, and then alias u equals c and l. Okay. All right. Wait, where am I? Okay.
You're code and supply.
Yeah.
You're giving a talk about pipenv.
Yay! Yes.
No problem.
Right. You're in the woods. The path leads to the left.
You're likely to be eaten by a brew.
Yes, exactly. Make the, all right. Okay, so once you get your package, so you create a package, you create a setup.py, you copy Josh's using his advice, you upload your package to PyPI, to the cheese shop or the warehouse or whatever we're calling it now, and now you want to install it. And you want to install it, are we familiar with pip to install packages? Do you use pip? Okay. And are we using virtualenv
Yes.
to get sandboxes? So these are two tools that have been around for a few years. Virtualenv, the N stands for environment. So it's a virtual environment, it's kind of a sandbox. So instead of installing packages into your global OS, into your global operating system, you install them into a sandbox for your project. So when you're running different projects, you need different versions of Django or whatever, you can sandbox them so they don't conflict with each other. So that's what virtualenv is about. And then pip is the Python installer of packages or something? What's the backronym? So you pip install into a virtualenv. You would pip install Django. So I'm going to create do I have virtualenv? Yes. So I have virtualenv env. All right, and I can not have Python 2.7. So yay. Okay. So I think I have Python 3 here, right?
I think so.
So env virtualenv. So I'm going to create a virtualenv, and I have no module named virtualenv. So this is going to be
You can use VM.
the end. Yeah, thanks. But actually, I only have a couple minutes, so I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. Because what you should be using instead now is, it used to be that you had to create these virtualenvs manually and then pip install packages into them once you've activated them. There's a new tool called pipenv, which brings together pip and virtualenvs. So it's kind of an abstraction over both of those things and gives you one tool to manage those. So I'm going to pip3, probably. Pip3 install pipenv. So you're getting a little meta. I've got install pipenv into my global operating system Python. it installs all this other stuff. Okay, cool, and you can see at the bottom, is that scrolling up enough there? So I'm installing virtualenv clone, virtualenv, all right, cool. Now I can pipenv, gosh, I think I can just, well, so pipenv is installed. Pipenv shell, let's do that. I'm gonna squidge this up so you can all hopefully see. Is that easier to see for the folks in the back there? Okay, so pipenv shell is creating a virtual env for me. And it's gonna store that virtual env in, .local/share/virtualenvs. So it kind of like squirrels all your virtual envs away. And then when you're in this shell, I've got, you can see that the prompt changed and I lost my alias, okay? That's because it actually set everything up for me and then spawned a new shell inside of this sandbox virtual env, okay? And now when I do Python 3, I'm using a Python that's inside of my virtual env that it created for me. So probably Python just works there too. Yeah, that's that Python 3. And now if I pip install, Django's going to be a big one. Hey, Postgres. Is it just Postgres? I think that works.
Don't you mean pipenv install?
Yes. So, I lost my alias. Here's the important thing. It created this pip file for me. So pipenv works with this pip file. So if you've ever used a requirements.txt, is that something we're a little familiar with? Requirements.txt is a way to establish what the dependencies of your project are. Pip file is kind of the next generation of requirements.txt. And so you can see here, if I pipenv, let's jump out of that, pipenv install. Let's do that again, Postgres. So now instead of just using pip, I'm using pipenv install, and now you can see pip file lock not found. It's creating it, so there's this thing called a pip file lock now. It's locking dependencies, it's doing some work for me, and it installs it, and now I've got, I have this pip file and this pip file lock, and the pip file lock pins the dependency that I installed to a particular version. So what this helps you do is have reproducible builds. So I want exactly this version of the file that I'm using. You install it here, you manage it, you check both pip file and pip file lock into your source control so that your colleagues, when they download your project and run pipenv shell, then they get the same version that you're using, so you've got consistency across your environment. So that's probably 3 minutes right there.
Pretty close.
Yeah, so pipenv is pip plus virtualenv, and it's some tooling you should check out. It comes from Kenneth Reitz, who wrote Requests, the HTTP library, and a number of other things. Yeah, check it out. Any questions on that one?
It's not really a question, just more like so everyone knows, like,
Yeah,
how do
absolutely.
you get pipenv?
Yeah, so as you saw at the start here, you pip install it. Yeah, so you have to, it is this third party, it's not, it's, I believe it is under the Python Packaging Authority. It's only maybe a yearish old, so it's still kind of baking a little bit. You'll occasionally run into a bug with it, so I expect as it kind of matures, it'll probably enter PyPI, I guess we're calling it, Python Packaging Authority. Yeah. There is another tool that I'm just going to throw out there that's called Poetry. Has anyone seen Poetry? If you really, you said an advanced tip too, Pete.
Sure,
You
yeah,
said-
that's good.
So Poetry is kind of a competitor, an alternative to pipenv that just kind of has some different opinions about the world and doesn't have kind of quite the same name brand behind it, but you might find that it's interesting to you as well. So check out pipenv, maybe evaluate Poetry as well, and oh, good heavens, stay away from Trove Classifiers.
Yes.
Yeah, in the back.
How does it compare to Anaconda?
Well, that's a great question.
Glad you asked.
That would be our next.
The next panelist is talking about Conda.
So, yeah.
It's kind of in either or, I think. Yeah, so this is pipenv.
Just before we on, I'll ask a What problem does the separate pip file and pip file.lock solve compared to like requirements.txt?
Yeah, so pip file lock is where it pins down the dependencies to a particular version. So pip file is more general, and it's where, am I in the right place? Pip file. So, oh come on, do I not have less? Where's less?
Yeah,
Is there any
you're
more?
good.
It's just short.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it said Postgres star. There you go.
Yeah, so Postgres, you can see here, is specified with a star, meaning take any version of it. I could edit this to be a particular version, but whatever version I do end up installing, that's the one that's locked and locked. So like, you could pin, you know, you can do things in here, you can do things in there like, you know, 2-point star to have that version of it, but you're willing to take package, you know, point releases and stuff like that.
Because like,
That's the main difference between the two.
yeah, because like requirements.txt, that was all jumbled up in the same
Yeah.
place, right? And so like.
And there's other things like you can specify which Python version you want. You can't do that in requirements.txt. So you can pin your package and say my project requires Python 3.x or whatever. You can't do that with requirements.txt.
I just have like one minor
Yeah,
note.
real quick.
It's just
Jump
like,
in.
there's like also one last thing it does that I think they're still implementing it, or it exists. Basically, it will check if there has been any exploits on that certain package. So if it's like an older one that has exploits,
yeah.
this actually now has checks for that. So that's something that's new that's added. That's kind of actually nice. I think is what with like you do with like sync, or I forgot how.
So sync check probably, yeah, there you go.
Check, yeah, something like that.
Check.
There we
Past
go.
508 requirements, installing package safety. You've got pipenv, what was the other one to show? Pipenv graph.
Oh yeah, this is cool.
Check. You do the same keyboard. Yeah, there you go. So, I mean, this one's simple because if I had pip install Django or something else, I'd see more stuff. Django's malware. It's new malware.
When you pin the
Yeah.
packages, you have to have double equals, like the requirements of txt, or it's gonna freak out.
Let's see. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
this
I mean, if I want to do it from here, Postgres equals to E2, like that.
Yeah, if you do it in the file and just type 2.2, it's not gonna work.
Oh, okay. You're saying you have
Yeah.
to do in that string where.
Yeah, you're gonna have to waste 2 hours of your life.
There you
Yeah.
figure out to put this 2 equals in it. There you go.
Oh wow.
There was
So
a
thank
weird-
you for wasting, your 2 hours are not wasted.
Yeah. So, right,
Right.
so, right, well, I mean, right, and this is hopefully why we're all here, is so we can benefit from those, painful mistakes that we have all made.
Yeah.
Cool, all right, great, thank you, yeah, we can
Cool.
take some more questions on
Thank
this
you all.
at the end. But towards the rear one, Mark's gonna talk about Conda.
Yeah, I use the,
Oh, there you
your fancy laptop there, I guess, that's all right?
go. I didn't mean to expose your desktop to the internet.
Oh, hopefully there's nothing
Hold on,
bad in there.
Found the hot corner.
Where is the internet? Pull up the Anaconda, when you Google it, you get, a movie and Nicki Minaj, but you also get Anaconda.com. So yeah, so what is Anaconda, right? So it's a Python distribution and package manager for, it's focused on, data science, machine learning, scientific computing, high performance computing. It dates back to around 2012, I think, that there was a PyData conference, like, there's a quote from Guido, you can find it on YouTube, where he's like, the requirements for like NumPy are so unique, you guys, the Python numerical folks, might benefit from building your own tool, and that was kind of the origin of Anaconda, and Continuum.io is the company behind Anaconda, and they renamed themselves to Anaconda.com, incorporated, Conda incorporated last year, but anyways, so Anaconda is like, if Python's motto is like batteries included in the standard library, Anaconda's like even more batteries included. It includes stuff like Jupyter, Spider, NumPy, SciPy, a whole, the default installer is like half a gigabyte just installer. So is it okay if I install Anaconda on this just to show the Conda command packaging?
It's,
So-
if it's a half a gigabyte, it's gonna take a while.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So there is what's called mini Conda, which is just the package manager itself. So that is a much smaller download. That will take should only take it's only 30 megabytes to so the benefit of, another thing about Conda, it's suitable for, maybe I should make this a little bigger. It installs by default into your home directory. So unlike, it doesn't install system-wide. If something goes wrong, the user has a problem, you can just say rm-rf anaconda, and it'll go away. Keep it, please. Where did downloads go?
Downloads?
Is it here?
Tilde downloads?
Okay, there it is. Okay, so this is just the anaconda, yes, and it's gonna go. I assume you're not gonna have it there already, you know. So okay, it's just yes, you go
know
into
what you're
your home
getting into.
directory, and we will rm
This
rf
is the
at
amount
the
of
end.
trust that I have in y'all.
Yes, appreciate it. So, but yeah, so the distinction between Anaconda and Conda, Anaconda is the distribution, the set of packages. Conda is the package manager command. So Conda, you do Conda install, it's kind of like pip, and there are Conda environments like virtualenv and so on. You don't need to change, I won't change your bash profile. I can do, run this. So the Conda command is basically the package manager for Conda. So by default, you get Python, your basic pip, etc., and you can Conda install various packages like, for instance, Jupyter is a widely used Jupyter notebooks. I'm sure a bunch of you are familiar with. Useful for folks who aren't programmers who do work with Python and data science. So Conda installs that and can install, download, all dependencies. So what is Conda useful for, or how does it relate to pip and stuff? I guess is maybe a relevant question here. It's you can Conda environments. You can install pip packages in Conda environments. I have this sorted out, but Conda packages are separate from pip. So Conda, the Conda repo is package repo is separate from the PyPI Conda repo, but you can use pip, like you saw was installed with Conda, to pip install. So it works well with Anaconda. The main role that Anaconda fulfills, like it's good for packaging non-Python packages too. Like you can Conda install GCC, Make, CMake, Emacs, Vim, Visual Studio Code. I mean, just like all sorts of Python related stuff. Just any software really.
Can you Conda install Conda?
Yeah, Conda upgrade Conda. Conda is just another package manager.
There you go.
So there you go. But not initially though. I see what you're getting at there. But yeah, so I think the phrase is like pip is an installer for Python packages in any environment. Conda is an installer for any software in Conda environment. So it's just that the Conda distribution is heavily, focused on Python related stuff. So me personally, I work on, as you said, it's a fluid dynamics code that's written in both Python and Fortran. So it's an open source code. So one of the benefits, there are other folks that do what we do. There are other commercial software that would do what we do, but the benefit of our code is that it's open source. You can modify it, but for that, our end users who are not software developers need to be able to recompile it and stuff. So Conda is the right fit for us because you can have just a simpler solution for folks to install our stuff, including not just Conda, not just the Python software for the GUI, but the GCC and G-Fortran for the kernel of our software too. So that's basically what so I just wanted to show so Conda list shows you what packages you have installed in your current Conda environment. You can create separate Conda environments with just like a virtualenv and have a different set of packages installed in each one of those. You can also install pip things. It's just a standard Python environment too. So if there's a package that's not in the Conda repo, for instance, we use PyTest with Qt. There is no Conda package for PyTest with Qt, and that's fine. You just use pip instead, and pip install that, and that works fine because it's just and it works well. And then when you Conda list, now it shows up as installed from Pip up here. Yeah, see, so certain packages are installed from Pip, so Pip kind of nicely fits into the Conda environment that way. You can also do things like Conda list explicit, which will, oops, sorry, again, I don't want to touch your
Thank you.
profile. Yes, that would be very rude. Conda list explicit will give you like a full URL, like with the exact version, so you can reproduce the exact Conda environment. So if an end user is having a bug, oh, I'm seeing a bug on their system, do Conda dump, run this Conda command, dump your environment, and email that to us, and I can reproduce your environment, whether it's on Linux, Mac, or Windows, and that's really helpful for us. So that's basically all I got. Probably over time.
No, it's okay. Any questions? So just the like, this is all getting compiled and like well, it used to be Continuum?
Yeah.
Okay. And so like, they're making sure that everything here works. And
Yeah.
So like, you don't have to like, oh, I got to install the Postgres, you know,
Yeah.
C headers and then compile it and hope everything's cool. Like, they already did.
Yeah, like Conda installed usually does like binary packages mostly. So it's already, so they already tested building it in, built in a binary environment Conda environment that's reproduced in your system. So it will probably just work on the like Windows, Mac, and Linux. So yeah, there's no compiling of things, which is something I was just trying to pipenv this week, and it's like, oh, pipenv this, what was it, WX Python or something? Oh, pipenv, oh, I can compile it. All right, so it takes a while, which is fine, but just like that's a source-based thing, and Conda's like a binary packages for like. So when to use Conda, it's like if you're have not just Python software, but also non-Python software, and if you're having something for like non-programmer users to install, it's what Conda's for, basically.
And so how do you distribute your application? Is it like like you go to here, go install Conda and then install my thing, or is it
That would be convenient if we could put our just in the main repository of Conda and stuff, but because we're government, software is funded by the government, we can't make it. You have to register to use the software. It's public domain. It's public, so I guess it's open source, you call it, but we can't just put it for free, anonymous download on the internet. You have to email us. We'll give you a token, and you do like Conda install mfix is the name of our software, and you specify a channel, and we do like this. It's like username : token, and then @mfix.nettle.gov. So
Mark,
which
that's
is
pretty
on our,
intense.
there's a link on the website. You copy paste this command to install, just like for anything.
Yeah.
Just like
Curl
copy.
pipe bash, right?
Exactly. Curl pipe
So you
bash.
can host your own Conda repo.
Yeah, because we have to host our own Conda repo because we can't. The government says you cannot download the software. Some evil country.
North Korea or whatever.
Exactly. If you have to email us and say that you're not from North Korea, and then we'll give you a login so you can get this string and copy paste that into your terminal, and that's the best solution I came up with for getting it. And it works better than what we had before.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Any more questions on Conda? We can come back to this. Yeah.
Can you tell us about your software or your product?
Yeah, it's just a quick note. It's Department of Energy, the National Energy Technology Laboratory, which NETL, which is a mouthful every time I tell people where I work and stuff. mfix is multi-phase fluid flow code, blah blah blah. It's computational fluid dynamics, but it specializes in like multi-phase, so it's like simulating solids and fluids together, like granular flow. So we have like a couple of videos on YouTube, like tumbling. We don't need sound. Or people. We don't want sound or people. Okay, so this is the. Real quick, this was released last year. So the GUI is in PyQt, so it's runs in both set up a simulation. You can define, VTK is the software from PairView for like 3D visualization. So you can define, you define a region, define the geometry for the fluid that you're going to simulate and stuff. Yeah, that's just, my coworker made this. Yeah, and it goes on and on. So yeah, you basically define like a 3D modeler, the geometry. The front end is all about defining the geometry for the software. Then eventually you get to configuring all the physics and all the solver, the math. And I have a degree in physics, but all this is. So then finally you get to actually run the solver, which is this 30-year-old code in Fortran. And then that runs down here in the kernel, and yeah, there's not much to see from there. But eventually, after that writes a data file out there, and the GUI can read those in and eventually visualize. Yes, we have skip to the end where you see actually some interesting fluid flow. So
What are you using for the 3D? Is that GL?
it's called VTK, so a visualization toolkit. It's got like you can pip install VTK. It's called PairView, I think, the company supporting it. And yeah, it does have like it uses OpenGL to render. So that's like headache trying to support that in like different Linux environments. You know, VTK is the one thing. If it weren't for VTK, we could probably distribute this with pip, except for I guess the compiler too. But VTK, maybe VTK is pip now. I'm not sure if pip installed VTK.
But yeah, this looks complicated.
Yeah.
No, I mean this looks like a complicated piece of software with a lot of dependencies. And
Yeah,
I can see
and
why
it's
you might
only a
like to
handful
use
of us that are mostly not programmers working on
Right.
it. They're like
All right.
physicists or
Okay.
engineers. So
okay,
that's the cool,
yeah, that's great.
cool things that you were asking for, I guess.
All right, awesome.
All right.
Thanks.
That's it.
Cool, thank you. All right, and then switching to the totally other end of
Yeah.
distributing reliable,
Includes
reproducible
all the-
builds,
all the things.
Chris is going to talk about Dockerizing.
I don't know what this is going to do to my YouTube recommendations now.
Right.
All right. This is a boring slide today. So like Pete mentioned, I work at Turnitin. We have some machine learning folks who don't use Conda, I don't know why. They just got started with lots of other things, but the pains of installing NumPy and distributing it actually led us to do things at Docker. So there's lots of stuff around Docker where people talk about Kubernetes and orchestrating things and stuff like that, but you don't have, that's not the only thing it does. One of the very interesting things is to think of it as a deterministic way to build your stuff and give it to other people and have them run exactly what you want them to run. And everything means the version of Python, whatever operating system dependencies. So if you have a particular library you want to install, like the Postgres library that's written in C or whatever, or your code, or dependencies of your code itself. This only runs on Linux, so but you can run it on virtual machines that are running on things like this. Running the code involves a layer of indirection, so you don't just run your command. You say docker run blah, and you give it some arguments. And you might have to think more about file systems and networking than you want to, but you probably won't, depending on the type of code that you're running. And I also talked about this. I can't watch the video because I can't watch myself give a presentation, but I talked about using Docker in this way to some folks last year. So the benefits, the users don't care about any of this stuff that we just talked about here. Somebody has to care about it, like you have to care about it, but users don't, which is kind of cool. They also don't care about Python 2 versus Python 3 or anything like that. And nobody cares about, dependencies, like dependencies you have. Sometimes they have dependencies that change over time if they don't pin their own dependencies, and that can come back to bite you, which is a real pain, if you're just installing things yourself. So nobody has to care about that because you've bundled everything up into a single thing. So when we talk about containers, a container is usually some sort of base image, and there's very heavy images and there's very light images. Then typically you'll install, if you're using some sort of Debian-based thing, you can use apt-get and install whatever libraries you want. And then if you're installing Python dependencies, you can use pipenv, you can use pip install, you can use whatever you want to install those dependencies, and then whatever your code is goes on top of that. And typically we use Docker files to do this stuff. So this is like just about the simplest Docker file that you can imagine. On the first line I'm saying there's a base image called Python for Python 3.7, and it's Alpine, which is pretty small. And I'm going to say I have a working directory of /app, and I want to copy, this is an old version, that dot shouldn't be there. I want to copy, that's okay, everything that is .py into that directory, and then when people run my container, I'm going to run Python 3 and then this script that I copied in there. And that's all it does. I'm basically just distributing my script. The script is the thing I care about. And the script is some sort of dorky thing to pull out unique values out of a CSV file. It's nothing that couldn't, it's like literally 20 lines of code. But now I can give this to anybody, and I don't care what they're running, which is kind of cool. You can do other things. So if, to extend the dead simple thing, if you had requirements that you wanted to install, you can, I want to copy my requirements files into the container, and then in the container, I'm going to run pip install -r requirements.txt. And that's going to install all of the requirements in that container. Now that container contains the operating system libraries that I need. It contains my Python interpreter. It contains all the stuff Python needs. It contains the dependencies for my script, which is in this requirements.txt file, and it contains my script. So how do you run this? You build a container, and Docker build is how you build stuff. -t is a tag name, so you need to give it a unique name so you can give it to other people or run it yourself. And there's some goop into the ... allied some goop that Docker displays, but the idea is now this thing tells me I have a container called unique-values latest. You can treat it like any other Unix tool. So here I'm piping in via standard in a CSV file called folks.csv, and I say docker run -i means I'm going to take input. It's interactive. I'm going to run my container called unique values, which is what I built up here. I'm going to give it a dash. So the stuff in red is arguments I'm passing into my script. I'm going to give it a dash saying I'm reading from standard in -- field 0, and it gives me the schools that are in field 0, the unique values in field 0 from the CSV file. And the cool thing is, one of the cool things is I can take that same output and then pipe it to sort, because it's just standard out, right? It acts like everything else you run. And now I have sorted values. So I don't have to build that into my tool. It just acts as a good citizen in the Unix system. You can also, you don't just have to use standard in. You can mount a local volume. So -v is how you mount volumes. I'm going to mount my local directory into a directory on the container called /data. And then when I run my script, I'm going to, instead of passing a dash for the first argument, I'm going to pass a path to my file, and I get the same result that I did before, because it's the exact same thing. You can also pass in environment variables. There's this thing called 12-factor apps, which you can Google it. It tells you how you should run stuff. It's more for servers and running services and things like that, but it has lots of good lessons. So configuration, you pass in with environment variables. So if my container needs to talk to a database, I can just pass in the database URL via a environment variable, and it talks to it, and it's good to go. And distributing this now becomes, now I have a container, I have a container image, now I want to give it to somebody else. How do I do that? There are things called registries where I can push, Docker uses pull and push verbs just like Git does. And if my name were your name, and I distributed this under a repo called your repo, I would say, hey Chad, just do docker pull c winter /your repo, and he would get my container and he'd be able to run it. And he wouldn't care about the version of Python or anything like that. And there's a default registry which is on top, and then you can anybody can run a Docker registry if they want. You can run your own personal one. You can use other ones like Key. Amazon runs one, lots of people run one. So I'm not talking about servers or orchestration or anything like that. That's kind of a different talk. It's about packaging and distribution. And there's a lot to talk about there. And that's supposed to be an emoji. But see, it's a bug in the Google slide. I've successfully got people in my company to start using emojis with bullets, which is kind of cool, which you can do with Google Slides. Ask me how if you don't know how. But if you do it in present mode, you just see that stupid box, which is a tragic bug. Anyway, that's it.
Great, thank you. Any questions about Docker?
I have a meta question. I'm thinking of pipenv, Conda versus this Docker thing, and I'm trying to think about the pros and cons. So the pros of this Docker thing is it's all contained. You don't have to install anything. That's the pro. The con is there's a lot more screwing around to set it up. Is that a good summary? Or
I think you need to have Docker installed, which is a thing. And if you're not running a Linux machine, that means you need to have some sort of virtual machine. There is a Docker for Mac, which I haven't used yet, but I think under the covers it's using a virtual machine. But you can run virtual machines anywhere. I mean, like I'm running a virtual machine right now, and if I ran Docker, it would talk to it just like anything else. But that is a barrier, right? Otherwise, I could just install Python and then have everything work, right? So it kind of depends on I think it depends on how heavy your application is.
Okay.
Like if you wanted to distribute something to somebody that had NumPy installed, this would be a great way to do it, because then you don't have to worry about telling people or hand-holding people about installing NumPy. You can just say, take this container, and it might be big because NumPy's kind of big, but once they grab it, they can run whatever they can do whatever they want with it.
Got it.
Which is kind of nice. But
Yeah, like let's elaborate on that. Like Docker is great for like a server app, a web app, anything like, especially in a Linux environment. Kind of might be more suited for like a desktop app, a GUI, a type of thing like that, because in theory you can run like a GUI in Docker, but it's trickery, right?
Right,
It's
right.
like you forward your X server or something like
right,
that.
right.
So if you're thinking about like a GUI type app, with even a simple GUI or a simple tool, then Conda might be more appropriate for that. But Docker is totally reproducible like a server environment. That's even more bulletproof for knowing exactly what you have all the time.
Any more Docker specific questions before we open up for this kind of general discussion?
Yeah, do you know what the size of Python 3.7 Alpine Docker container is?
Off the top of my head, I don't. I think it's on the order of 20 or 30 megs. It's pretty small. The other ones, like there's Python, if you go to the Python Docker Hub page, there's a dizzying array of Docker tags that you can use. So some of them are Debian based, and there's different versions of Debian, like there's Jessie and Slim and all these sorts of things. The Debian ones tend to be heavier, like a couple hundred megs, but there's a lot of other stuff there. Like they will be able to compile things on the container for you. Like if you need to install Postgres, like CycloPG, and don't use a binary install, it'll be able to. You can say apt-get, libpq5 and all the things you need for Postgres, and then compile it on there. But it's bigger. So. I'm sorry. 5.
Wow.
Oh,
That's tiny.
Yeah.
way smaller than a Conda install.
Micro.
2 orders of
You need
magnitude.
a micro Conda installer.
So, and I think just one of the lessons here is that the choice, like that all these tools have different uses, and that what it really seems to me is like that the appropriate one depends on your audience.
Yeah.
More than like what's even convenient for you as an author or a packager. Nobody wants to write setup.py, but if you want to get to everybody, that's your audience. Similarly, like if you're Dockerizing, like that's most like in-house your service. I guess they're public Docker images too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so it's just who's running it. I mean, I think is what it comes down to. Yeah. More questions, people, the horror stories, success stories. Anything else we can share with you?
Yeah, I've got a Flask, the 3.7 Alpines. You can get down to 100 megs. The Alpine base image is 5, but if you throw other stuff on top of it, it gets a little bit bigger. Mine are averaging about 100 megs. and the Jessies can go up to. You put Oracle drivers on there, you're looking at 1.6 gigs.
Because they need Java, right?
What don't they need?
Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions? Any general Python things as long as we're sitting around before I start? Yeah.
One use case that I've seen for Docker is it's really handy for people who want to put a demo on their website. If you want to show people how your code runs, but again, this is audience specific. If you've written something that you think will appeal to the kind of people who would have Docker installed already or be willing to install it, it's a great way to just this is.
Here's my web app. Just go try it, kind of thing. Yeah.
Or if you give presentation and you want to show something, how it works.
Exactly.
I hadn't seen. I mean, I was surprised. Like, I haven't seen running it as a Unix command before.
Right.
Yeah, that's cool.
Like, I've certainly run things interactive in it, and I've like used it to spin up server processes. But it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because one of the things. So, I used to do Perl a long time ago. I've only been doing Python for about 4 years. And Perl always suffered from the problem that it had a great package management system, but it assumed that you had one version of Perl and everybody was installing their packages into one place. And then later, because it was built at a time when disk space was really expensive, and then the calculus of that changed, so we have virtual ones now, and you can make as many as you want, and it doesn't matter, it's fine. And Node does the same thing, right? And it's kind of carrying that one step further, because it's like not only can you just have all your libraries and stuff, but also everything around it. You can just give it to someone, because who cares? Disk space is cheap. So, yeah.
Okay. And is there Node under Anaconda?
I wouldn't surprise me.
Really?
I could, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, it's a general package manager, so
That's
it's like
cool.
Conda install. I bet, yeah.
And can you do the like same? Because I mean, the thing that everybody else talked about that didn't come up Conda is, can you do the version pinning?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
and
like
it's
a
all
requirement
there's
as
the
well.
whole syntax with the equal versus double equal. We can it space greater than equals. You have to use that. Not without the space, it doesn't work. Or some quirk like.
It's got a similar.
Yeah,
kind of
it's
like
got its whole
requirements
language
file.
on the website. Yeah, with you can specify version pinning and all that trickiness. If when you need it.
Okay.
So I'll share a war story about packaging, and I guess this is not Python specific, but is more about pinning dependencies. Are people pinning their dependencies? I want to encourage you to do this, and here's why. Okay, so pinning dependencies means not just saying, install left pad or whatever it may be. Whatever package you want, Django, Postgres,
just at
whatever.
random left
Random,
pad.
the first one that comes to mind. Like, you don't want to just say install this, but give me whatever version of this package, because who knows what version of that you're going to get. So we ran into a situation at work, a month or two ago, where, and it was actually a JavaScript dependency. We were talking about dependencies of dependencies and how those can shift on you, and it's like, well, I pinned my dependencies, but I didn't pin the ones under it, or I pinned, I pinned it to, x.y, but not x.y.z. And so we had a situation where in between when our deploy went to our testing server and the week later when it went out to production, a dependency of a dependency changed a minor point release, and that introduced a bug. And that bug, was this perfect storm, because that bug happened to affect this drop-down widget that we were using, which is the one that the president of the company that we were demoing for, trying to sell, really wanted to see in this one part of our app, and so our sales folks were out there in the field demoing the software, and we're like building up to this moment, and now we're gonna show you the thing, and it was like, and it didn't work, and they were like, they're slacking us. I'm like, what the heck is wrong? And it turned out to be because we didn't pin our dependencies, and this minor point release introduced a bug that just so happened to be the bug that bit us. So, yeah, learn the lesson that it's two equal signs, and learn the lesson that you should use those in
As
your
specific
dependencies.
as possible.
Yeah, the long-term goal with this is, and this is a sort of been a multi-year effort across multiple different language communities, Linux distributions, is reproducible builds.
Yeah.
Is that you should be able to kick out the same set. You run GCC and Python, you should get the same bytes out every
Exactly the
time.
same,
And that's been an interest from the security community
Yep.
for kind of various obvious reasons. Make sure the NSA isn't bugging your Python interpreter or whatever. But has also turned out to be really, really quite helpful in just day-to-day software development because it's just things aren't moving on.
It reduces risk.
Yeah.
But the flip side is that then you're responsible, and this actually gets back to security, you're responsible for managing your dependencies at that point. You have to proactively monitor what security patches are coming through and have kind of a regular procedure of updating your dependencies yourself. You're owning that responsibility.
There is help.
Talk to us.
No, I don't have anything to do
Yes,
with
there
it.
is help.
This is, we use a system or a service called PyUp. Does anybody use PyUp? Yeah, and it's, they're raising their prices in January, which I'm not happy about, but, so it is a paid service, but, well, it might not be paid if you don't have private repos. So we have private repos, and you give them access to your GitHub repos so they can have write access. And what they'll do is every time one of your internal repos changes, they'll check all of your other repos that might reference that and say, hey, this thing uses this library that you just updated, you should know about that. And also, and more usefully, is I think twice a day or so, they will take what's been updated in PyPI and say, hey, guess what? A new version of Botto 3 has been released, or a new version of Request has been released.
And Chris, are they the ones that actually make a pull
Yes,
request?
and they will
There's
make
a bot that makes
yes,
a pull
and they will make a
request.
pull request. So all you have to do, and it's a pull request, so that means all of your normal continuous integration stuff runs against it, so you know that it works. And you just say, yes, I accept, and it will move on through.
What was the name of the tool again?
PyUp, P-Y-U-P.
There's another one called SNYK, is it? SNYK does something similar that might be more general.
GitHub is adding native support for this. I know they have it
They
for
started rolling. They have it for
Node and
Python
maybe
now.
Ruby, and they have it for Python now.
Libraries IO, I think, was starting to do it.
Yes.
And GitHub picked
Yeah.
it up.
So I've been looking at alternatives because they're raising their prices.
Yeah.
GitHub support is for security alerts, not
Right.
opening.
Right.
for
Not
noise.
right.
any-
But they have one of the apps in their like
Right,
app store.
marketplace, yeah.
I forgot the name of it. That one supports multiple languages, so it supports PHP, Python. I think they have a beta support for Gradle and the other one for Java. So that one is native for native in GitHub. Doesn't do a virtual user in your organization like PyUp, and you can use it with multiple languages.
Right.
And their pricing is better.
Yeah. Please tell me more about this.
Cool.
We're pretty happy with PyUp.
Yeah.
But yeah. So,
I'll tell maybe one last horror story. So I've written a couple packages and put them on PyPI, and so this tool Twine came out, which helps. All it does is uploads. Like you write your setup.py, you build it, and then Twine just does the upload. And that was because for a good decade, you were unable to use HTTPS. You were unable to use SSL with PyPI. And so I remember sitting at PyCon one year and trying to upload my package, it's not working, and realizing I have to switch to a plain unencrypted URL to upload this thing, and going, oh my gosh. Oh my, because you're sitting at the conference with probably hundreds of people, and you can just publish package, you can just sniff their password to publish package. Somebody actually given a talk about it a year prior, and I was
So
late to the
Mozilla
game.
money gets you more than just a logo, it gets you HTTPS.
Yeah.
And let's encrypt, right?
Yeah, well,
right. So it's come a long way. It's come really a long way. I mean, back in the early 2 days, there was no dependency installation. So you install Django, and it needed 36 dependencies. You had to install those all by hand.
Cool.
Yeah, it was great. So
Make files.
make
And
make
upgrade
files,
them.
yeah.
And upgrade them.
Yeah,
And upgrade them.
scones or
And yeah.
scones.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you know, I never
Yeah,
used
that's
Scott.
fine.
Yeah,
I
I
never
don't
used
much either. So anyway, if this is all looking terribly painful, it's much better, and we still, it's still continuing to improve. Yeah, for in general, Python Packaging Authority is a pretty good resource for this sort of
I
thing.
have one other. Does anybody run their own repo or their own private
You should.
server? Yeah, I do, because we have private libraries that we publish to ourselves. But I don't know what.
For you run your own PyPI?
Yeah, there's a package called devpy, which we use to do this. And it's
So
pretty
you run your own like PyPI server?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
and
this is the left pad thing, right?
Yeah, right.
When the package disappears from the public repo.
Right.
Yeah.
And your software depends on somebody else's repo having that package in it, that's your fault.
Right,
You know, like
right.
you should need to be running your own.
Yeah.
But so you're not mirroring, this is just to host your own?
It proxies.
Yeah.
So basically all of our stuff, I don't know if anybody noticed when everybody was installing stuff, but the pip index was, I think pypi.getlightbox.com, which is ours. And so everything goes through that. And then if our repo doesn't have it, it goes out to the public PyPI server.
Okay.
And it'll cache it locally.
Oh, to cache it locally?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
interesting. What's that called? DevPy?
DevPy. And it's just so there's a DevPy and DevPy server, DevPy client. And when we have our continuous integration build one of these packages, it will DevPy upload
Your internal
that,
stuff.
that particular thing to our DevPy server. And
Oh wow, so you're building, so your internal packages, you don't pull from a Git URL.
Right,
You build a proper like tarball or wheel
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah.
Huh. And how come?
I don't seem to make sense.
Flexibility. You never know, might need it someday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we do the same thing,
Yeah.
and a lot of it's too just to facilitate the workflow that commonly people use, because you can specify Git URLs and requirements.txt.
Yeah,
It's a pain in the ass.
it is.
It's much easier just to tell your devs, look, here's requirements.txt, use this for your repo, install with pip, and everything will be as it should be.
Right.
So this is where I say it's even easier to tell them to pip that. And then you say it's even easier to tell them to Conda. And then Chris gets the final.
Well, yeah, but
even
that's
easier
just
to
happened
Docker.
today. Like today, I do use Docker to build the kind of package inside of a Docker environment for reproducibility, CI and all that, which is great, right?
Yeah.
But the build started failing today, which should only fail if we check in something and we break the code or something, but it failed because it was doing a Conda create environment every time to create a Conda environment inside the Docker image, but Conda was down for whatever, or they had an upgrade or something, and so it's like, what I really have to do is set up that what you have, a mirror of the Conda repo of just the stuff we need at least, and then reproducibility, it should only break when you're, a developer manually makes a change instead of whenever some package somewhere in the universe happens.
I mean,
Because that's what
it is-
happens with the
It is
not
infrastructure though. Like it's not free.
Correct.
I mean, it doesn't
Takes
cost
time to
money.
set up,
It doesn't
yeah.
cost much
Yeah.
money to set up, but
It's your time and effort,
exactly,
right? versus
exactly.
from
And then if
size
it goes
of team,
down,
so.
somebody's getting a call, and that's no fun. So.
Yeah, and so kind of across the board, there's a whole lot more tooling you can add to automate, right? And again, it's like that upfront overhead, but you can set up Travis to build your Docker images and push it to a container repo, right? And so that like the image that you ran your test against, it's the same bytes that you'll run on your server.
Yeah.
Like that's the dream. And for a lot of us,
It
it still
works.
is a dream.
It works.
Yeah,
No,
it does.
works.
No, it does.
Yeah, we do this. It's
Yeah.
good.
Not too
All
bad.
right, terrific.
I had a question, I guess, with the regarding setup PY and pipenv, right? Setup PY being the original, Python solution. Now pipenv is like the new official, you might say. I was just curious. Do you still use a setup.py with pipenv? I know you can,
So
but
the
are you
setup.py
supposed
is
to?
on the publishing side.
Okay.
Right, so when I go to make, like that Postgres package that I wrote, right, I had to make a setup.py for it. Probably did copy it from another package. And then you run, Twine is newer, but yeah, you run Twine upload or whatever, and that publishes either to your internal package repo or to the public PyPI. So that's on that side. And then as a user, you never need to think about setup.py, right? As a
Oh, yeah,
consumer,
as a user.
that's when I use pip install or pipenv install, so that's a little gotcha there.
As a
You just
developer,
do
yeah.
that, As
So as a developer, you still write a setup.py, even if you're packaging something using pipenv and developing with pipenv,
Yes.
it's still part of your
Oh,
workflow.
yeah, they're two sides. The one
Yeah.
is, publishing and
Big
putting
difference,
up,
yeah.
and then pipenv
Yeah.
is how you pull that back down.
pipenv has some of that same metadata, right? You have your versions in your setup.py, and there's the versions in the pip file requirements, and now so we're, I know it's
Right, and so that's
digging
not
into
just
it a
between
bit.
pip file and pip file lock.
Mhm.
And so pip file, you just express the top
Yeah.
of your tree, right, of your graph of dependencies.
Mhm.
So you would say, I need requests.
It's like your direct dependencies.
Yeah, your
so
direct
like you'd
dependencies.
say,
I need
I
request
need
file.
Django, but
Right.
not Postgres and MySQL and whatever. It'll figure that out for you.
And then the pip file lock has that full tree, that full graph, right?
It's
So-
like what you get with pip freeze.
Yeah.
That's
It's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
thing.
But you don't need to
but
manage.
it has more, it has like the SHA hashes in it
Oh,
and stuff
right.
like that, so it can, yes,
right. So like,
reproducible bytes again.
yep.
Yeah, does that get it?
Yeah. So you set up PY. You don't need to specify a list of dependencies, and you set up tools installer or anything like that. You should, for workflow, you would just
no. So what you do is
you define
so
your
if
Pip
I'm making
file
a
lock,
library,
and then
if I'm making a library,
Mhm.
right, and I say my library needs, I'm writing a library that needs whatever Botto3, okay. So I put that in my setup.py as an install requires equals Botto3, okay. And then, my library is named Pete, okay? And so then I publish a library named Pete. Is this okay? It could be named John.
Just don't expect me to work.
Okay. It's not until later. So I publish Pete, and Pete depends on Botto3, okay? So then, as a consumer of the Pete library, I would do pipenv install Pete. And that's what I say. And so that goes into my pip file. But then when it installs, it pulls down Pete and then inspects Pete's setup.py. And that's how it knows to, oh, I also need to go grab Botto3. Okay?
Great.
Yeah, so as a consumer, I'm transparently using that setup.py to get that transit dependency, right? And pull in Botto3, and then pipenv gives me the tooling to then freeze that. So if I look at pip file, I see Pete. If I look at pip file.lock, I see Pete and I see Botto3. I see pinned versions, I see SHA hashes, and that's the lock.
Pipenv is for installing packages or managing environments, not for actually building them.
Correct, yeah. The
Okay, now it's clear to
poetry
me now.
tooling that I mentioned actually
I got you now.
it encompasses
clear,
both.
yeah. Okay, excellent. Cool,
That'd
thanks.
be good follow-on at some point. So anyway, all this setup.py stuff, even if you're not thinking about publishing stuff for public consumption, it's still actually a good way to share code internally because it makes your stuff installable as opposed to, hey, go check out this Git thing and stick it on your Python path somewhere, right? And then, oh wait, go install dependency by hand. It's just making your coworkers' lives a little bit easier. Cool. Okay, any more questions? And then I got one more thing we're gonna try to do here. So, do people like this? This kind of different format, better than or not better, just something different. We're trying to mix it up a little bit. Cool. So on that line of thought, next month I was hoping to do community lightning talks. And so just it's kind of can be challenged to get up here and talk for 40 minutes by yourself. And so I wanted to try to find something that anybody could do, new to Python, new to speaking, whatever. And as we all know, Python 2.7 is going end of life in 2020. And yeah, right, well, so that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And so I think for a lot of people that the sunset of Python 2 has been something like a source of apprehension of, oh my gosh, I got to port all this code. And it actually turns out there's a lot of new stuff to get excited about in Python 3.
Yeah.
There's a whole, it's 7-8 years of new development of not just fixing things, not just making like porting problems for you, but like actually new stuff that's exciting to get about. And so I thought that would be a good set of topics for lightning talks. It's just new things, not how to port, not like, oh, this is better, just like new stuff. And so just looking for, it's on Meetup, I'll send it around again. But just kind of looking for volunteers. I've got links to potential topics and then all of the what's new releases for all the previous Python versions, and just really like, I'm just trying to make this like a community effort at collective self-entertainment or something. And so I need your help because otherwise you're going to get bored of me and all these other kind of people. And so yeah, if you're interested in that or if you want to talk about it, it'd be a good way, like if you're new to the language, like to just, I don't know, kind of get your feet wet. It's kind of low-key public speaking, like anywhere up to 5 minutes, could be 30 seconds. You can just stand there and read the what's new page if you want. We'll be fine with that.
And if it's your first talk, you get to pick your chair.
But yeah, so we're gonna do that. We're gonna do that. Oh gosh, October. Blah, blah, blah. 24th it is.
Hey.
All right. So yeah, please sign up and yeah, if you have any questions, I'm on Slack and yeah, thank you all for coming.
Okay, thank you.